Hey there, CJ Math students, and welcome to Notes 1.1. So, as a reminder, anything that goes on my paper goes on your paper, and make sure that you watch and rewind the Edpuzzle questions because that's part of your kind of daily grade here in math class. You don't want to just guess and just watch through. So if you have to rewind because you didn't hear what I said, do it, and I can see that you have or haven't. So first we're going to talk about today is Unit 1, rational numbers, and we're going to try and connect it to real-world events and how sometimes numbers cause problems. So first, a rational number is any number that can be expressed as a fraction, call it a decimal, or a percent. So some examples of rational numbers include something like the number 2, 3/4 is a rational number because that's a fraction, 25% because that's a percent, 0.5, right? The improper fraction of 18 over 8, and even the mixed number of 2 and 1/5, right? Those are all examples of rational numbers. Now we have a language arts connection. I know you're going to talk about kind of conflict and collaboration in language arts, so let's define the word conflict. Conflict is a serious disagreement or argument, and you could also say the definition is to be incompatible or not get along, right? To be incompatible, to clash could be another thing, right? So what's an example of a conflict? You could say something like good versus evil is an example of a conflict, right? The Bears versus the Packers are an example of a conflict, okay? And lastly, I want to think about this big idea, limited resources. Now, we can't really define it, but we can describe it. So we can say that there's this idea that there is not enough of something, right? It could be food, could be water, could be money, could be oil, could be anything, right? So we'll say like food, money, etc. means etc. All right, for everyone. And so examples again: money, oil, video games are even an example. So there's this big idea that we have these numbers in the world, and a lot of it always has to do with money, right? But oftentimes there are not enough resources because they're limited and they cause conflict. So sometimes we can say numbers cause conflict because they're limited, right? So let's take a look at how that might, we could actually see that. So if we take a look at this pizza, it's actually a graph, right? And it says if the world were 100 people, 30 people would always have enough to eat, and 15 of those 30 people would be overweight. They'd have too much to eat. Another 20 of those people would be undernourished, right? That means they don't have anything to eat almost. They're almost dying of starvation. One of them would be dying of starvation. And then 50 people, so half of the world's of this village, 100 people, don't have a reliable source of food or are hungry some or all of the time, right? So think about that. If we just pretended the world were only 100 people, it's billions of people, but only 100 people, right? Half the world is hungry most of the time, or they don't have enough food. 20% of the world is undernourished, right? So we can go ahead and say, what percent of the world gets enough to eat? Well, that's these guys right here, right? They got all the toppings on the pizza, right? 30%, right? Out of 100, that's why we can say it's percent, right? What percent doesn't get enough to eat? Well, for this, we'd have to add some numbers up, right? Because we got to talk about the 50 who don't have enough and the 20 who are pretty much almost starving, right? So they're 50 plus 20, it's 70% of the world, right? And when I've been saying percent is a rational number that is a part per 100, right? The word percent means per 100. And if I asked you to find the percent of something, it means we try to find the part of 100, and we do it by multiplying. We're going to change those pesky little percents into decimals, and we're going to multiply. So basically today what we'll be doing is trying to multiply percents, finding percent of and multiplying. That's the end of part 1.